Hey guys, I want to talk today about some things to expect when you play your first gig. There's a lot of things that are quite obvious that you pick up when you've played a few shows, but you probably wouldn't know before you play any. So I want to clear things up and just give you some tips really. So the first thing is transport. Driving to a gig is probably the best way to do it because you can fit all your equipment in the car, it's easier to load in everything. You don't need to find train stations or whatever, but if there's no parking around, it can be a nightmare, especially if you're in a city or a town where the roads aren't that great. I live in London, and London, Cambridge, Sheffield in the UK, these are all places where driving isn't that fun, and a lot of venues don't have parking nearby for free or around the venue at all. So in cases like that, you probably want to take the train, but that comes with its own drawbacks as well because you can't necessarily bring all the equipment that you want to. The other thing is try to make sure that the entire band, if possible, travels together, because the last thing you want is for everyone to be traveling in apart from like one person, and then that person turns up late, doesn't make the sound check, doesn't know where the venue is or whatever, and then you're waiting around for them. So if possible, travel in together, preferably by car, but if you can't do it, then you can't do it. Now, another important thing is equipment and backline. Now, normally a venue would provide a basic drum kit without breakables for each drummer to use, but that does mean that every drummer would have to bring their own snare, their own cymbals, their own sticks. I mean, that's pretty obvious, but it's kind of like in polite bad form to ask to borrow someone else's, so make sure you've got all those things. As for bass, normally the venue would provide a bass amp. Well, it depends on the venue really, but normally each band on the bill would share the same bass amp. And if not, you can plug the bass into the PA if you've got like a DI pedal or whatever. For guitar amps, normally the venue would either provide a cab or expect you to bring your own amp. It's not really a big deal to bring your own if you can, especially if you're driving, it's quite easy. Sometimes a band would bring an amp and offer the other bands to use it, but it's quite rare. Probably one of the best things to do is start a group chat with the other bands on the bill, the sound engineer, anyone else involved in the gig if you can, and the promoter. And then you can work out who's bringing what equipment, and if you need to bring stuff, if you can borrow someone else's stuff, if someone needs to borrow your stuff. It just runs a lot smoother that way. Because a lot of the time, ideally you'd have a sound check and everything, but a lot of the time you don't get one. You'll just end up turning up at the gig, everything will be running late, and then you'll pretty much have to go on with like a line check 5 minutes before your set. So you want to minimize stuff like that happening and minimize changeover times as well. Another thing is, if you've got a new section of a song or like a new thing you want to try out, don't do it at the gig. Make sure you test it at rehearsal before. And that also goes for new equipment that you might have bought that you want to use. So say you've got like a really nice new guitar pedal or even a guitar. The last thing you want to do is use it for the first time at gig volume at the gig, and then find that it's feeding back a lot or it doesn't sound good. So make sure you use stuff at rehearsal volume, which is pretty much the same as gig volume anyway, first before you use it at the gig, because most of the time stuff sounds completely different at home volume than it does at band volume. A lot of the time I've bought pedals and stuff and thought, wow, it sounds really good in my bedroom, and then taking it to a rehearsal space with the band and it sounds like absolute shit. But yeah, just test stuff really, that's the main thing you can do. Don't expect there to be like a massive audience. There will probably be some people there, obviously it's a show, but a lot of the time they'll just be there because they're there anyway to have a good time. Don't get pissed off with your friends or whatever if you ask them to come and they're not there, because it's really hard to get people to do stuff. If you play a few gigs, release some stuff, and people actually end up liking you, then they're more likely to come. Or if it's like your first gig and they come in for like a novelty value thing, then they might do it as well. But if you're playing like every week, you can't really realistically expect people to come out and see you all the time, so don't take it personally. Another thing is, being nervous about playing is really normal. People say they don't get nervous, but they're lying to you, because everyone has got stage fright at some point. And the best thing to do really is, it's probably bad advice, but have a drink or something, or if you smoke, have a cigarette to chill yourself out. Also, it's probably a bit disgusting, but the last thing you want to do is like get on stage and like be distracted because you need to go to the toilet. So make sure you get that out of the way before you go on. Seems obvious again, but you know, it can happen. You get on stage, you need to go for a piss, and you're just like, yeah, can't concentrate on playing now. Try to make sure you network with other bands as well, because they'll often be traveling in from other places, or you'll be traveling to their town or whatever to play, and they can probably get you gigs if you guys get along and you play similar stuff in different parts of the country or wherever you live. It's always good to know people in the music scene anyway, because you know, it's just like a big community. Everyone can help each other out if they need to. And knowing bands around the area that you live, around the country, around the county, you know, it helps you get out there quite a lot more, and it gives you a foot in the door with promoters as well. Now, unfortunately, you probably won't get paid for doing low-level small gigs unless it's, you know, explicitly stated beforehand, and even then it'll probably be a small amount. For these type of gigs, you can pretty much just look at it as a free rehearsal. That's what I've done in the past. You know, if you're playing for free, if you're going somewhere that doesn't take a big expense or a lot of time to travel to, especially, you can just say, you know, rehearsing in front of an audience. You don't have to pay for a practice room or whatever. You know, fair enough. But the thing is, once you get to a certain point, you don't want to be taking free gigs all the time, because if people can come out to see you for free every week, then they're not going to have any incentive to see you if you start charging for gigs or start taking ones elsewhere. So you kind of want to give the audience obviously a good show, but don't oversaturate yourself. That's another important thing. Now, one thing to consider is that if you're a guitarist or a bass player or other instrumentalist, try to make sure you bring a backup instrument to the gig, because if your main instrument goes down, if a string breaks or the electronics don't work or something, nobody wants to watch you try and fix it on stage. So try and get like a cheap backup or something, you know, pick something up secondhand, just grab something light, easy to bring to the gig. As long as it works, it'll function as a backup, and it's better than trying to fix anything on stage. Now, the last thing I want to say is that if you're playing a song on stage and someone messes up, you know, misses the cue or whatever, plays the wrong part, don't stop the song for that sake. Just carry on playing anyway. Because if you stop and look at the person who messed up, not only does it make them feel bad anyway, which they probably do because they've messed it up, but it makes it obvious to the audience that something went wrong. If you just carry on playing the song anyway, I guarantee like 90% of people won't even notice that something happened, because they won't know your material that well. Even if it's a cover, they'll probably be like, oh yeah, they're putting their own spin on it. But just carry on playing the song, because the last thing you want to do is go to a gig and the band keeps stopping and starting like it's rehearsal. You want to play like a solid set, like, you know, play a song, crowd banner or whatever, play a song, more crowd banner, play a song, tune. Just try and like plan it out so that it flows. Don't keep stopping and starting. Anyway, thanks for watching this video as well. Hopefully this gives you some advice, tips and stuff like that. And yeah, check out any next videos that I make.